Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, so you know what time it is. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. My name is Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant. Welcome to the show, and I'd like to also welcome our co-hosts, Royce Russell Esquire and Edward Pichardo Esquire. We appreciate you tuning in each and every week. Each week, clearly, we have some prophetic ability because we talk about it and then we see it happen in the news, and we're able to break down all the nuances of what you are seeing and witnessing in real time and what that means for us culturally. So I'm excited for today's show. We have a lot to cover, but before we get started, of course, my co-host would like to greet you. So we'll go over to Royce Russell Esquire first.
Hey, I just want to welcome everybody back to another segment of Speaking Legally. As we say, where the cultural and legal either collide or come together, one or the other. But we want to keep you on point. We want to give you the information that's necessary to protect, empower, and be able to plan, because that's what life is. Life is trying to effectuate your plan. We know the person upstairs ultimately controls the big plan, but while we down here and he's watching or she's watching, let's control what we can, and let's plan our work and work our plan. So thank you for joining us, and I'm glad to see you. Easy E, what's up, baby?
Hey, what's up, my brother? Hola, buena tarde. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, to Speaking Legally. I think this is going to be a pretty exciting show for the audience. I hope you find the information, as usual, fulfilling and educational as well. So welcome.
Absolutely. So let's get in it. We talked about, and hey, Richard, hey, Deborah, welcome to the show. We talked a lot about a lot of things that we've seen played out, but we took the time for both of our attorneys to really get into DACA and what is happening in our country right now, the decisions that are being made. So guess what? It's back in the news. So Mr. Russell, there seems to be an update that we want to share with everyone. Hey, Jason, about DACA.
Yeah, as we discussed in the last episode, we talked about while we were looking at the elections and we were looking at Trump and we were looking at recounts of the count of the recount, that we have to keep our eye on other issues that are going on behind the scenes, right? I call it 3-card Monty. You know, you're focusing on which card and where the chip is, and you kind of get lost, and the real and powerful, long-lasting stuff is going on while you're focused on something else. So while you're focusing on the election, DACA is being repealed or being challenged, and we've come to find out that Trump has lost in every single way imaginable, and DACA will live on. And that's an Obama 2012 initiative, and DACA will live on. And so, as we spoke it, it is, right? Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which we call DACA, Department of Homeland Security, Immigration has now officially put out flyers, memos of understanding that they are accepting new applications as of December 7th. And so that was just Monday, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, or Sunday, one of those 2 days, December 7th, that they're now starting to take applications. And so DACA is well and alive. You don't have to fear for being put in removal or immigration proceedings. If you're eligible, you can apply. If you don't remember the requirements, look at our last episode of Speaking Legally, and you'll find out what you need to do and how you need to go about it. Or just give me a call, 718-785-8890, and I'll walk you through that process. And so I'm glad to see that.
Absolutely.
We are down the block and around the curve once again.
And that continues to just amaze me when we talk about the things that we're going to discuss on the show, and then it ends up in the news. We keep looking at each other like, wait, are we slightly prophetic? Because there's a lot going on that we see happening. But this is why it's important to have these conversations where the legal meets the cultural. That's what's important to us, and that you understand it. And please go back and catch the replay on Mr. Russell's Facebook, Mr. Pichardo's Facebook, or you can go to Destiny Designers TV on YouTube and see the playlist of all of our episodes. But in addition to that, we spoke about another case that Mr. Russell is a part of that is gaining some traction in the media. It's not a new case, but unfortunately, this is what we see happening in real time. And he has been quoted, I should say, in the news with what is happening with this particular case. So if you remember when we talked about Trayway, Mr. Russell, what is happening. They are quoting you on News One. They are quoting you in the Post. This case is picking up a lot of traction. So where are we now, and why is this a hot topic in the news?
Well, number one, anytime people of the Black and brown community are subject to what I call excessive force and fatalities, it should be a topic that is newsworthy. And so kudos to the media for having their hand on the pulse of what is important in this particular case to our community. But as we all know, the devil is in the details, right? And here we are, once again, we have the NYPD deciding they're going to release what they call the body cam footage. That is the camera recorder that police are supposed to wear on their body as to what occurred that evening, which led to Kowalski Trawick's death. And my analysis says that in their efforts of trying to be transparent, because that's what we hear all the time, they know that I know that they know that I know that they have failed, and that is intentional. The clips that they have shown and they have released is just another way to assassinate Mr. Trawick's character. It is death by words and death by video, and it never does justice to what happened in totality, right? How did we get to the place where this young man is dead? How did we get to this place where this gay African-American male who suffered some mental challenges wind up dead at the hands of the police? How did the NYPD fail us in so many ways, from failure in what they call CIT training, where a social worker is supposed to be present, how they failed in not calling for emergency service unit to be present when they knew they were dealing with someone that they have labeled by way of 911 call emotionally disturbed person, how they failed to communicate with FDNY, the fire department that was there prior to their arrival, and only thing Mr. Trawick wanted was to get into his apartment, which he was able to do so by way of the FDNY. Failure to have a true understanding of what occurred, and at worst, they were arriving to a scene where if Mr. Trawick was arrested, he would have been arrested for a violation, not a crime, and at worst, a misdemeanor. How they failed to assess the situation where they have a person with a stick who's trying to bang on the superintendent's door to have that superintendent get the keys so he can get back into his apartment because he thought he left something burning on the stove, and so had to go to the fire department and have them do that. How, which is not so ironic, and I want us to hold this in abeyance because I don't want us to jump to the gun too quick, but if we did, I understand because I'm all over jumping all over this gun, as they say, and that's a play on words. Is that why is it an officer who has 3 to 4 years, who is white, who does not live in the community, does not listen to his partner of 4 months, who is an African-American male and who's been on the force for 16 years, not use his gun, not use the taser, when that officer is telling him, do not use the taser, do not use the taser, we are not going to do that. And what is the disconnect? I mean, we talk about it, I'm just going to go on a little bit of a soapbox. We talk about this in cardiac arrest. You know, how when we are asking questions, it's not perceived as a question, it's perceived as a challenge of authority. So when these officers illegally enter Mr. Trawick's apartment and he's saying, what are you doing here? Why are you in my apartment? And they're saying, put down the knife. And he's saying, I'm cooking. Why are you doing here? What are you doing here? Why are you in my apartment? They're not listening to that question. They don't even hear that question. They're just in a place where it is aggression, 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 and no de-escalation whatsoever. And we can see that from the moment that they decide to put on their black gloves as they walk up the steps to go to his apartment. But it's in the news. I know the community is going to rally around this family. I can anticipate rallies and protesters around this family, including those from the LGBT community and including those from the Latino and African-American diaspora. If you're not safe in your home, where can you be safe? I mean, and I think when you put your key in your door and you close it, you expect to be able to relax. And it seemed like there's no place that folks of black and brown complexion can relax.
If I may, I want to start off by saying welcome to Professor Davies. I saw her image appear. She was one of my professors from Binghamton University. I'm glad she's joining the show today. When I think about this incident, I think about the phrase, which may be a bit sexist, a man's home is his castle. And so, your home, you're inside of your home, and this door is pushed open, and these individuals decide all of a sudden to, launch this attack against you. I also think about the whole idea of colonization and folks from outside of the community coming into the community and dictating your moves and your behavior and how you should act when you see them. It almost seems as if there's an expectation that when you have a uniform and a badge, individuals in certain communities are supposed to jump, maybe prostrate, maybe lay down on the floor first, and just surrender themselves to this immense authority that has come into their presence. It's kind of amazing there, because I look at this incident. The officers push open the door. They aren't, the door isn't opened by Mr. Trawick. That's my understanding. I wasn't there, but it appears so in the video.
You're correct.
And then he's being commanded to do certain things while he's inside his home and they're outside. At this time, the encounter is more investigatory than anything else, because I'm not sure there's evidence of a crime being committed at that point that would allow anything greater than a conversation between these officers and this citizen. That's another part of this that is extremely disturbing to me. And then, there's this conversation from certain quarters, and what I'm talking about specifically is, if I may, Royce, is I believe there was a New York Post article accompanied by this same video with this conservative spin to it that just focuses on, he has a knife and he has a stick, and kind of trying to justify what the officers did to him, but ignoring the fact that he's inside of his home. They're outside. They're the ones who open his door. He's telling them to close his door. I mean, it's just rather bizarre in terms of the spin that the NYPD, the New York Police Department, is trying to put on this, and how they're being assisted by one of the most conservative newspapers in America on this incident.
Well, I mean, look, it is not surprising. The stubborn facts, what I call a video, is stubborn facts. It's not going to change. But when you look at all the elements that you have just described, right? Mm-hmm. He's in his home. There is no law for being in your home with a knife. You haven't broken the law. There's no crime. You haven't broken any crime. You're in the home. You have a knife. That you are cooking. And at no time is he saying, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to stab you. If you take another foot. No, what he's saying is, I'm cooking. That's why I have the knife. He is actually answering the questions. And to your point, the Post tries to portray him as some erratic, disturbed individual that's acting violently. And by all accounts, if you listen to all the radio runs, you listen to anything, they said his man banging on the door with a stick. And if you use common sense, which we all know common sense ain't so common, is that there is no altercation between Mr. Trawick and the fire department. He wanted to get in this apartment. A matter of fact, when he got in his apartment, there is evidence that he was ecstatic. He was elated. He wasn't agitated anymore. He was like, thank you. And the reason why he was so thankful is, and we've had this happen. You've had it happen, Ed. I've had it happen. Dr. Grant has had it happen. You leave your house and you think you left something on. You think you the stove is on, or the oven is on, or the gas is on, or did you put the alarm on? And you get halfway where you're going, you're like, did I do that? And you wind up running back, and you run back in a panic because you want to make sure everything is all right, because you don't want a mistake to happen. And so what one calls agitation, I call excitement, because you're concerned that something is going to happen. And when you realize that that is not going to happen, you walk in your house, nothing was on, the stove is clear, you elated, you're ecstatic, just like FDNY described his personality to be. So now for him, it's over. The chapter is closed. I'm on to the next thing. I am now going to cook. That's the next thing that I'm going to do. And so he proceeds. And so to have this interruption and to think that, like you said, they have to put themselves on to, they have to do something. They don't have to do anything, and ignore all the signs that says that you might be dealing with an emotionally disturbed person. You know for sure that on the dispatch, that location is described as a sensitive location. So you know that there has to be some heightened awareness, and you proceed in a manner that is contrary to the police patrol guide. If you think you're in danger, your job is to confine and contain. That's it. The man is in his apartment. You think there's danger? You go in illegally, close the door. That's it. Call the emergency services unit. Call the supervisor. Do a bunch of things that they fail to do.
It simply failed. Like I pulled up, we saw the article, New York One was quoting you on saying that there's some very definitive things that need to happen, and you calling for termination and listing everything that you just explained that Ed touched on. And I'm looking at the post, and they're making it seem like he was wielding a knife and it was such a great threat. And, setting it up for people to read and think that there was justification in a man losing his life. And how can you justify that? He was in his home. FDNY said he was so grateful that he got in. He was able to check his stove and continue cooking. But that's the challenge with narrative and who controls the narrative. So once again, we have to be very careful on what we ingest, what we're reading, what we're critically thinking about, how we fact checking so that we know the whole story. And this happened a year ago. And now it's getting publicity because we're at the point where real action has to take place. Now, NYPD can't hide from it, and it's in the public eye.
Now, one of the things
I think if I may,
one of the things I want to shed light on is that he was so ecstatic, he pumped fists with the firefighters. You pump fists, that means like, yeah, yo, bro, thank you for letting me in. This guy is my client has turned the page. He was never really a violent person as they try to let on to be, because video footage shows that he walked right by the superintendent when the fire department personnel came. He walked right by security. There was no threats. There was no knife. There was no onslaught. There was nothing except for him in his long vest, cut off sleeves, his shorts, and his stick, and he walked by. The fire department personnel didn't think that he was a threat. Like, we need to take that from you. They saw no issue. They saw someone that was agitated trying to get in. They know that most of the times people say my house is on fire or the dog is drowning or something is going on to get you to get there so you can resolve their situation. That's commonplace. So who escalated, when, what, and why? And then you want to show this snippet, not even not transparency. You want to show a snippet of a video and wrap it up in a GIF and say, here you go. And you're not going to let the family see the uncut, unedited version of what really took place. And you got a deadline, irrespective of the holidays. I'm sorry, Ed.
Well, I just wanted to say that it is part of, I believe, a general narrative of painting black males as dangerous, to the point of attributing superhuman abilities that require extraordinary levels of violence in order to defend oneself against these fearsome individuals. And this is historical. It's like sometimes conservatives will say, well, why do black parents feel the need to have that conversation with their young men? there is a reason, and this is part of the reason. The reason being that we normally have to talk to our young men because people, in many cases, attribute an older age to them. You know, your child is all of a sudden a black male, adult male who's dangerous simply because, you know, he's had a growth spurt, you know. This idea that he's stronger than the average person, so we have to like do all these things we got to take him down. We can't, you know, the minute he speaks up, we got to let him know, you know, that whole bestiality mindset, you know, it's, and that is particularly the reason why we have these discussions with that I've had to have the discussion with my soon to be 16-year-old son. And I'm sure, you know, you've had to have that conversation with your son, Dr. Grant, and your son, Royce, because you're afraid that people, instead of looking at your child and as a human being, as, you know, at the age that they are, whatever age, but as a sensitive human being that has feelings, that is deserving of a level of love and respect and care, is looked upon as this individual that has to be feared and is dangerous and it may just jump 12 feet and be upon you all of a sudden, you know.
And Ed, let me cut you off. Exactly to your point. This man, my client, Mr. Traywick, was tased, and they want me to believe that he was tased in the prongs is prongs. So, you know, the prongs got to come out and is attached to the gun, right? The taser. He's hitting the chest and he's hitting the thigh and he goes to the floor. Now, I've never been tased before, but I would imagine if you're tased, you let go of everything that's in your hands. I don't know how you hold on to it. I don't know how you hold on to it when you hit the floor, but then they want you to believe that he was able to jump back up and have the knife and the stick still in his hand. Now, that's that superhuman feat that you talk about, right? You know what I mean? Here's a little levity. When Nate Robinson got knocked out, he ain't jumped back up with his fist ready to fight. He was laid out. You know what I mean? That was it. It was over. And so this, you know, ability to do these superhuman things. And look, and this is not gender, you know, gender particular, because when we look at our daughters, you know, oh, she looked like a woman, oh, she looked more developed. All these adjectives can go and can be replaced with aggression to develop, or she looks older than what she is, to our daughters or sisters out here. And so it goes directly to your point of how we treat it. But Dr. Grant, you put up this Instagram, or excuse me, Twitter trail from Eric Umansky from ProPublica, and I would love for you to read it because I think it sets the record straight of everything that we're talking about. So can you take a couple of minutes just to roll down and read that for us?
Sure, absolutely. Eric has been really documenting the pieces to this. So he said NYPD finally released video Tuesday, but it won't release it all. Won't even let Traywick's family see it. NYPD told family's lawyer, R. Square ESQ, it needs to protect sensitive images of Mr. Traywick. Really? And then he highlighted in the footage that due to our pending internal FID investigation, as well as to protect the sensitive images of Mr. Traywick. What was sensitive about the images? And he goes on, Traywick, who was 32, black, alone in his own apartment, shot 112 seconds after the police arrived. It happened 605 days ago. The NYPD hasn't released this investigation, hasn't released the footage, hasn't disciplined any of the officers. The officers were still working, going about their business. He's talking about the only thing that NYPD said publicly initially 604 days ago was that the shooting appears to be justified, and told reporters that Traywick had charged at the officers with a knife and a stick. He goes in to talk about before he got the footage, it shows one officer, experienced and black, repeatedly tried to stop the less experienced white partner from tasering and then shooting Traywick. And he continues down to talk about he was a dancer. He was deeply loved by his family. His sister called him his superhero. He struggled with mental health and drugs. And the night he was killed, he called 911 after being locked out. And we talked about that before. But before I scroll any further, I just want to go back up. You brought it up earlier, and I wanted to underscore that there was a black officer who was there saying, you don't need to pull that out. You don't need to do this. and he wasn't listened to. So what does that say? You have someone superior in years on the force instructing someone who is new to the force, and they didn't even consider. You're talking about seconds that this black man was killed after them entering the apartment.
That speaks to I would say racism, classism, and hey Ed, we know this one right here. Here he is with the police department. I mean, with the fire department. He's not. There's no issue. Hey man, get me in. Now let me in. I have no problem with that. That wasn't shown on the news, right? You should saw that. Here he is walking by. Well, he walked by the supervisors and all that before coming down. Here are the officers. There's no rush. There's no exigent circumstances to cause them to have to run upstairs there. There's none of that. They created and they escalated a situation in less than minutes, 112 seconds, less than 5 minutes. And, I will spare, our viewers from seeing this. They can see the rest, it's out there. I want them to follow it. I want us to follow this case. This is a staple for how the LGBT community is being treated. It is a staple for how people with mental challenges are being treated. It is another example of how people in the Black and brown community is being treated. And it was just only 2012 that Ramarley Graham was shot in his household right in front of his grandmother and 6-year-old brother. What have we learned since that time? It appears nothing. And we're not even talking about the Deborah Danica case where, the officers being charged criminally for shooting her. And Kevin, one of our faithful watchers, even went back to Eleanor Bumpurs. It appears that nothing has been learned and nothing will be learned if we have officers going undisciplined, not terminated, district attorneys not looking to really do their job or allow other entities to do their job, whether it's the attorney general, whether it is the Southern District or the Eastern District. Move out of the way.
And what we're about to show is just another example of what you just said. How much has really changed from Eleanor Bumpurs to Ramarley Graham to now talking about Trawick? What has changed? And this is why the outcry has been at a fever pitch in 2020. How can this happen? And, when I heard about this story where you can put the life of a police officer in jeopardy, but no one comes away with a death.
That's about race and that's about class. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm baffled by this one, and I'm just going to play the video. I think we need to just see the video. It's only 17 seconds, but I'm going to press play.
And this is in Staten Island, everyone, so you understand. Still right here in New York City, right here in the backyard, is the tales of two stories.
So as this is coming up,
boroughs.
Yeah, look, once we get past the ad, I'll show this. But this is a surveillance camera that's going to show you what happened with NYPD. I'm just really so baffled by this. Watch.
Well, the sheriff's department, yeah.
The sheriff's department.
So they're chasing after a white defendant.
Look at this.
Police are on the hood. He's driving with the police on the hood of the car.
I cannot.
And guess what, Ed? What happened to that individual when he got arrested?
That individual is out of custody. His lawyer is arguing some sort of self-defense. Now, this is an individual who was openly defying the law in terms of maintaining his pub open and allowing individuals to go in and congregate and consume alcohol with no respect for mask wearing or social distancing, my understanding. In fact, what ended up happening is after his establishment was closed down, he reopened it and tried to let patrons in through an alternative back entrance. And the sheriff's department that were enforcing the city's orders with respect to, these establishments being able to serve their customers noticed what was going on. And then went to effectuate an arrest. My understanding is that he runs instead of going ahead and submitting to the arrest or, you know, allowing himself to be seized. He runs to his car, gets in his car, turns on the car, and then tries to run these law enforcement officers over. And so, you know, the idea here is simply whether a male of color would be allowed to engage in the same conduct and not lose his life, or at the very least be subjected to some level of violence, or at the worst lose his life, or even beyond that remain in custody. Because, you know, I find
that's an assault. That's an assault on a peace officer. That's an assault on an officer. That's assault in the first degree.
And whenever you talk about an officer being assaulted in this city, the NYPD, I mean, they go nuts. You see Pat Lynch in the courtroom screaming for murder, asking for the defendant to be hanged. I don't see any of that here. I mean, I haven't heard anything yet. I mean, I'm waiting. I'm like, wait up, one of your own has been assaulted. I mean, what's the story here? Does it depend on who the defendant is? I mean, is that what's going on? Is it a color thing? I mean, listen, if that's the barometer, maybe I need to use some Ambi and lighten up my skin, and maybe I'll be safe at that point. Maybe I got to do a Sammy Sosa. I mean, listen, I love Sammy Sosa. I got the Cubs jersey in my closet. But, you know, I saw about a few years ago where he had bleached his skin, and I said, wow, why did he do that? And maybe he said, listen, I want to make sure that I never get it. I'm safe from the cops. I mean, Jesus, what is going on here?
And Dr. Grant, I think it even goes further if you can show the other clip. And look, and some of our audience already know this, but there's a segment of our audience that are just going to watch what we call Speaking Legally because they want to see what we're saying, and they want to see where they can criticize, and they want to see whether we are factual or fictional. That is factual.
Listen, another argument
is dead. That young man that tried to run over the sheriffs, he's alive. He doesn't have a scratch on him.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And another thing is,
get.
And another thing is that one of the arguments being used here is that this man was guilty of nothing more than violating an ordinance with respect to his pub, his bar being open when it wasn't supposed to. Well, Eric Garner was selling cigarettes. He lost his life in that same borough of Staten Island. Right. I didn't hear, I mean, what happened there? I mean, is the barometer whether the original offense for which you're being arrested for, if it's a minor offense, then you're supposed to keep your life? I mean, Brother Floyd, what was it? A $20 counterfeit $20 bill, and he gets suffocated to death. I mean, listen. I mean, we could talk about that if you want, but be careful if you go down that road. And
Brother Treywick, at best, is a harassment violation.
Yeah, right. I get killed for cooking, right?
Right. You know what I mean? Dr. Grant, do you have the TikToks?
Yeah, we're going to go through that next. I just really wanted folks to see the visual a little bit longer because the disparity is clear, right?
I agree with you 100%. I think the visual, but I think the verbal is going to be outstanding. The visual, picture speaks 1,000 words. I understand that, but actually, if the picture talk, that's even better.
So this is
what
Can you rewind that? I didn't hear you, Mr. Russell.
I just said you need to rewind that because I think she's already engaged.
Yeah, we'll start from.
I want you to get out of here and won't listen to what I'm trying to say.
She said, I am the fucking police. He said, wow.
You believe it?
See now, now you're gonna be friendly to this fucking guy. I tried to fucking talk to you.
Oh, wow.
Well, like I said, there's one thing to have the visual. Now you have the verbal with it, and now this is the tale of two lives. I mean, like this is. Can you understand this? She said, "I am fucking talking," and they said, "So the fuck what?"
Wow. Kids are watching. Bleep, bleep, bleep.
They're still excuse me. Bleep, bleep, bleep. They're still standing. There's no backup. There's no putting on no black gloves. There's no whistle like in my neighborhood when you get in trouble, you whistle and the crew come. There's nothing. There's no getting on the radio. Nothing whatsoever.
No respect for NYPD. So let's start there. Then, like you said, no one came, but there's so many levels to this that's disturbing. So is this the kind of behavior that we are seeing encouraged in this country when it comes to who can protest and who can say what and who, like there's different rules and different laws? What's happening?
You let that be any of the organizations that I know. Justice Committee, Gathering for Justice, Color for Change, Until Freedom, you name it. You let them go with the protest, the Women's March. You let them go and protest and tell an officer, shut up or get the bleeping out of here. You know how many summons I have to represent people on because they're gathering in a public place, expressing their First Amendment rights? And here, this is a direct threat, 101. I'm telling you to your face, you don't matter. And what I see on the same page of you don't matter is when I look at Mr. Trawick's death. You don't matter. It's amazing.
And for some of the viewers, I'm not sure if they were able to notice this, but when I first saw this video, I believe he had on a MAGA hat, a Make America Great Again hat. So you have
yes.
Yeah, so it looks like you have this conservative individual. I believe we're talking about Rockefeller Center. It looks like in the background is, doing what he does, voicing his conservative views and feeling empowered to, curse out this cop and waving his hands when he's doing it. Because that's another thing. The cops will say, oh, he was waving his hands and I felt threatened. He was also yelling at me and I felt threatened. You have to warn your clients who are engaging in any sort of First Amendment protest activity not to do these things or else they will be arrested. And yet you got other individuals that can blatantly ignore such things because they feel empowered. Listen, this is my society. Nothing is going to happen to me. I don't feel threatened. I have nothing to worry about. I can, bleep, bleep, beep the cops. I can wave my hands in a furtive fashion and nothing is going to happen to me. You know why?
You work
because
for me.
I'm a white male in this country.
That's right. You work for me. I tell you what to do. I am the original landowner here, if you want to take it back historically, and there's no overseeing over here, and you move on your merry way. And we know that.
And let's think about this too. There's a sexist angle to this thing too.
Oh, without a question, she's a woman.
There's a sexist angle to this thing too.
Right, without a question. But I would tell you right now, as we know and we have seen. But maybe there's people in the audience that don't believe it. Maybe sometimes people check out, but they need to check the box. You know that we can never do that. And we put all this in a vacuum, and we want to look at it all together because we have death on one hand, and we know that if we switch the scenarios, put that white man in this facility that Trawick was in, assisting living house, that white man would not be dead right now. he'll be telling you how the police came in and he told them to leave, and they were like, all right, well, stop messing with your neighbor, leave him alone, we're just going to leave right now, everything's good, everything's okay, good, you're cooking, talk to you later. And if we take that same scenario and we were to implant and insert Trawick at Rockefeller Center down there, whether Trump or no Trump, and the police officer said, shut the bleep up, get the bleep out of here, and his retort was exactly what you heard, you would have the physical excessive force, over aggression, escalation, no matter where you place that brown or black body.
That's the unfortunate truth. That's the unfortunate truth. And that's the frustration of our communities, our Black and brown communities. It's just not fair. And this is happening in real time. So it's not even like we're referencing things that happened, months and months ago or years ago. This just happened. And social media is capturing everything, good, bad, or indifferent. It's capturing it. And we know that couldn't happen if the situation was reversed. So the outcry for justice, the outcry for looking at what this justice administration and what's possible for justice, can it be achieved? The two of you are in this fight day in and day out, advocating for clients. It continues. There's no one magic pill that everyone's going to take and we're healed and there's no more racial injustice. People were under some misnomer that because we had our first African-American president, no one would be racist against Black people anymore or brown people. Well, clearly we're seeing the memo real time every day. I still don't understand how these things are hitting the news after the national outcry, after everything that we've witnessed in 2020, that these situations continue to emerge. So I want to thank the two of you on behalf of all of our viewing audience for the work that you do daily to make sure that we're protecting the rights of our community and we're advocating for justice, just like now with Trawick, that his family receives the just due after what has happened. We can't bring Trawick back. We can't bring any of the names back, but we can honor them by staying the course with getting the reforms that are necessary for us to live in a fair and equitable society.
And, often we talk about local politics and how important that is. And whether it's the district attorney's office, that elected position, whether it is knowing who is the NYPD commissioner, and that is appointed, knowing who is the DA in any borough that is elected. And guess what? It's that time of year again for elections to come about, mayoral elections and district attorney elections, in particular in Manhattan. And Ed, I know you've had your hand on this pulse all day, every day.
Oh yeah, I mean we got the mayoral election coming up in 2021, but one of the offices to look at in particular is the Manhattan DA race, the New York County District Attorney's office. The current incumbent district attorney right now is Cy Vance, and Cy Vance has been under a lot of criticism over the last number of years, ranging from him not prosecuting Harvey Weinstein several years ago when his office had the opportunity to the dropping of charges against Dominique Strauss-Kahn. That was the French individual who was accused of attempted rape of Nafissatou Diallo, who at that time was being she was a maid in a hotel that this individual was in, and he was going to be the presumed prime minister of France and wasn't able to ascend to that seat because of some belief of this charge. But eventually the charges were dropped. People looked at him in terms of that, and some other issues and failings there. And there right now is a presumption that he is not going to be running for re-election. So you have about 9 individuals, the individuals that are pictured there, who are running for the office. And so what I would say to our audience is who, and those who live in Manhattan, because those are the only individuals who would be able to vote in that in that election, they should pay close attention to who these individuals are. They should study their records and make an informed decision as to who they are going to vote for. And think about it. The Manhattan District Attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of the county of Manhattan, meaning that is the individual who decides whether or not to file criminal charges and what sentences to request once the person either is found or pleads guilty, and is a very important part, if not one of the most important pieces of the criminal justice system. And so when you look at the criminal justice system, most of the people involved in that justice system as defendants are brown and black, right?
That's
and
correct.
Traditionally, this office has been held by nothing other than white males. And so possibly this is the first time we're going to have a non-white district attorney in the county of Manhattan. Only one of these candidates is a white male. The rest are female, and then females of color. And there's only one African-American candidate, and that's Alvin Bragg. And he is actually the first of all of these candidates who have declared in this race. The rest of these folks, came onto the race, later on. But, there's I'm not going to use this show to endorse any one of these individuals, but I want to let our folks understand that this is something to look at. There's a lot of information on these individuals that you can look up. You look up where they come from. What have they done? What do they stand for? Are they in line with the issues that are important to you? Do you think these are people who are going to care about you in that courtroom if you happen to get charged? If that beautiful young man or young woman that you have in your home happens to make a mistake and ends up in the system and is being charged, is this DA going to use the proper amount of discretion? Are they going to look at your family member or you as a human being when they decide whether they're going to file charges or not, pursue charges, pursue a certain sentence? What are their priorities going to be? Look at it carefully. This is an important race to watch.
One of the things that I hear, and we have to be mindful when we hear the term and what it actually means, is progressive, 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 progressive. What does that mean in this particular race? The term progressive is flexible. It bends. It redefines itself. And you will see and you will read in this article that's before you how everybody is a progressive. And you will hear how everybody's progressive. But what does that mean? What is progression to you? Define it. That is the challenge, and that is the question that should be brought forth to these individuals. What does it mean? So what? I am an immigrant. We all immigrants to a degree when it comes down to the United States of America. So what? I am a woman, so you're going to see it differently? Show me how you're going to see it differently. Just don't be a label or agenda and say that you're progressive, and that's supposed to check the box that everyone is supposed to say, all right, you're the one for this county. This county brings with it, Manhattan brings with it a lot of political baggage. And it's been my experience watching DAs do their work. Politics gets you sooner or later, and you succumb, and you do things that you wouldn't normally do. Judges do it. I see prosecutors do it. I know DAs have done it and will do it. So can the person stand the pressure? Or will the pipe burst? Can they say, no, this is my vision and this is how I see it? There is much to do about bail reform. When is it appropriate to use it? When is it not? It might be unpopular, but should it be enforced, and why? And, I'm seeing a lot of smiling faces. I don't know if they would stand the test of time when I look at their CV. I know,
and I think you're absolutely.
Look at his CV. I know his CV, but the rest is, I don't know.
And it's amazing you say that, because nowadays you see a lot of people talking about how they're progressive and how they did this and they wrote this report. But meantime, you look at them, you say, "Wait a minute! Don't you live on 30th and Park Avenue in a penthouse?" And you know, and you know, when you look at them, are you really a progressive? Have you suffered it all? Do you know what those people uptown, how they really live? I mean, what have you experienced? What did you experience now? You know,
And I've seen a lot of, when I've read this article and I look at the face, I see a lot of civil rights attorney. And look, civil rights is a broad basket. We all know that, right? Civil rights is a broad basket. So you're a civil rights attorney, you fighting for people rights in landlord tenant in residential housing. Well, how does that translate to civil rights and what it means to be a district attorney? Now, if you're practicing civil rights and you're in the area of 1983 human rights violations, false arrest, excessive force, I see the translation. But don't just throw up the sticker civil rights and, you know, or those important, you doing Title IX employment discrimination. You know what I'm saying? Like let's put it on par on what we're talking about and what is necessary to fulfill the requirement. And it's labeling civil rights, progressive. You know, there has to be actions behind the words. And maybe I'm not in the know. That could be it. Maybe I'm not in the know because I don't know any of these people except for Brother Alvin, you know, so maybe I'm not in the know.
Yeah, no, listen, it's amazing. I mean, you know, some of these folks that you look at and you say, you know, they say they're progressive, but you know, some of them are former prosecutors, and you say, well, what were you doing when you were at the prosecutor's office? You know, how were you handling those cases? You know, what units were you working in? And then, you know, it's just interesting. What I would say to folks is, you know, look at the record. Look at what these people are actually doing. Where do they live? Who do they know? What do their lives look like? Are you going to be able to identify with them? You know, do you share something in common? I think that's what you have to kind of look at. That's what I look at when it comes to my candidates. Can you relate? You know, and if you can't relate, I don't care, you know, if you wrote, you know, some progressive report a year ago and a whole bunch of folks are giving you some accolades. You know, I want to know, can you feel it? What is going on inside you that you can convince me that I should, you know, trust you with this eminently important office, you know, that's affecting my people? Because when I go into those courtrooms in Manhattan, all I see is a bunch of black men. I see Latino men. I don't, you know, some of these other folks, I don't see too many of them in there, except if they're wearing a suit and they're representing our folks, or they're sitting up on that bench. Because you also got a paucity of black judges too, black Latino judges. You don't see too many of them either, yet they're the ones making all the decisions in the system as to what happens to us. You know, so I find it interesting that, you know, a lot of folks are taking on these progressive labels, but when you ask them where do you come from, where have you been, what have you experienced, you know, how do you think, can you relate, you know, have you suffered at all, what have you been through?
I haven't seen you at any protest. I haven't seen you at any rally. I haven't even seen you write any editorial, anything in the newspaper that gives some thought to the position of black and brown folks or how you see the criminal justice system working. I see nothing. I see a bunch of labels, and labels will get you nowhere.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think it's important for us to just really talk about how important it is to see yourself represented. Like, if you don't see yourself represented, how can you trust that someone really understands what it is that we're going through? And on that vein, as we're getting to the top of the hour, I want to shout out where we did use our democratic process to make change in history in Queens, New York. So I want to introduce to those who don't know the first African-American Queensborough president, my Queensborough president and dear friend, Donovan Richards. And that's his beautiful wife, Tamika. We had his swearing in on Sunday. It was a small, cold, private ceremony. Well, it wasn't private, it was open to the public. It was outside because of COVID. So we all had to, be appropriate with our distancing, etc. But this was historic. This is something to celebrate because Black and brown boys can aspire to do this work once they see someone in that position. And his son is 5 years old. We call him D3 because he's the third. And he can look at his father. He might not appreciate it now, but he will appreciate it later, the sacrifice that it took. And this is a brother from Queens, from the streets of Queens, right? He didn't have any money given to him. He didn't come from money. He grew up in the streets, had his struggles, made choices and decisions that, thank God for mentors and people in his life that gave him a different vantage point of how to see the world, that he was able to go from point A to point B, service on the city council, and now become the first African-American Queensborough president for the history of this office. So I wanted to close on that note. Yes, I'm biased. Yes, he's my brother. Yes, I am proud because I know he's going to do the work. And to your point, he represents the interests of everyone in Queens. And to his credit, has been already inclusive in bringing all the backgrounds, religions, and interests together in his transition team to ensure that everyone is at the table. Every need is addressed and discussed. And that's the kind of leadership that we need to be looking forward to as election season gears up again, because 2021, there's a lot of city council seats that are open. There's a lot that will be going on and candidates like the DA's race in Manhattan. So stay the course of paying attention. Who's doing the work? Who's actually going to represent your interests and know something about the candidates and show up for these special elections that will be happening soon.
Amen.
So any final words from you, Mr. Pichardo? Because clearly, Mr. Russell just gave us his.
No. I mean, listen. I think the topics that we covered today, we went from the issue of DACA, which is of immense importance to our immigrants, and we talked about the Trawick case, the bias when it comes to white privilege and the encounters of white males versus black males with the police. We rounded it out with what's happening with this important Manhattan DA's race. And so I hope everyone found this program educational, fulfilling. And I say ever forward and onward, brothers and sisters, hermanas y hermanos.
And I would like to suggest and welcome all those that are fighting for justice, no matter what community you represent, to pay attention to the Kowalski-Trawick case. And come on, be part of the solution. Have your voice heard. We can't bring them back, but we can make sure it never happens again. So I thank you in advance.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Speaking legally, where the legal meets the cultural. Bye-bye, everyone.